And in my photography, generally speaking, not necessarily with respect to these images, what I try to extract is the experience, not the scene. I don't necessarily want to represent what you may see with your eyes. What I want to do is strike that chord in you. For me, that is what Fidal's photos do. They strike that chord. They put you in that frame of mind. You see the photos and you yourself remember the larger experience that you might have had. And to a greater extent, that is what I try to do in my photography. Now, these photos that I'm going to show this afternoon, these are people who I've come across, who I've photographed. It's one of the things that I most like to do. I like to take photos of people, not necessarily stage photos or portraits, which I like those as well. But these are just people who I've come across, encountered, while looking for people to take photos of, interesting people. Now this first one, the lady who is seated is Jacqueline. Jacqueline was a challenge. Myself and Mike, we were taking a walk at there's a mall on Water Street, right opposite Republic Bank. And they put a number of vendors into that location a few years ago. It's a more formal, structured location. So I've always liked markets. And this was one of the first markets that Mike and I visited to take photos of. And Jacqueline is one of the first people who was less than pleased. Not because she was being photographed. I suspect it was partly because she was not being photographed. We were actually just taking photos of the scenery, the walls and the signs on the walls and whatnot. And Jacqueline accosted us, demanded to know in a very aggressive way why we were taking photos of her, which we most assuredly were not at that time. I like this photo because I was able to chat with her and convince her that I had no ill reasons for taking her photo, for taking photos, generally speaking. It's a very unusual thing for Guyanese to be walking around with a camera. I mean, you expect to see tourists doing that. But Guyanese don't do it, so immediately your motives are suspect. It took about 10 or 15 minutes, but I was able to convince Jacqueline that we were not trying to do anything to her. And it got to the point where she actually allowed me to take her photo. And it's a very natural photo. She was pleased at that point, no longer aggressive. And it sort of set the stage. This is one of the earliest ones I took. Perhaps sometime around, gotta be 2008 or so. Not an interesting fella. He pushes a peanut cart on Avenue of the Republic, right near to my office. This is the corner next to my office. It was a rainy day, hence the umbrella. And he was just standing up right in that spot. In that position, I walked past him going the same direction he was facing and just happened to look back and see him. Walked in there, put the camera up and just nodded to him. Never asked him, never spoke a word to him. And he just nodded back. He understood perhaps that I had no mean desire against him and allowed me to take the photo. I've had occasion to chat with him afterwards. I didn't speak with him at that point. But I've spoken to him a few times afterwards. He's a very interesting fellow. So I gave him a photo, but this is a confluence of two things. An interesting person and a pretty photo. I just like the photo. This is Saffron Street in La Penitence, right next to the La Penitence Market. In fact, if on the right of the frame, maybe about 50 feet away is the La Penitence Market. A few of us, I can't remember, it was definitely myself and Mike, but I think there were some others there as well. The government had announced that they were widening the road, and had demanded that the vendors who had been there for in some cases more than a decade, demanded that they remove from there. Well, they were there illegally. I mean, they were not there with permission, but nevertheless, they had been there for a while, and they were understandably upset, but had begun the process of moving nevertheless. So we went and took some photos there, hoping to capture these vendors before they disappeared. Well, as it turns out, their protests were sufficiently vigorous to convince the government to reconsider that. So several of them moved, but others are still there. These ladies weren't market vendors. These were just some ladies enjoying the afternoon breeze, chatting and relaxing. And I thought that this is a picture that goes back to that gestalt that I like to talk about in my photography. I believe that you can see similar scenes all around the Caribbean, perhaps even some Asian countries, Southeastern Asia. You might even see people of similar skin colors looking the same in similar situations. But I do not think that there is any Guyanese anywhere who will look at this picture and not instantly recognize or suspect that this may have been taken in Guyana. And this is one of those pictures that does precisely that for me. This is a very old picture. This was taken at Rewa Village. The main reason I like this photo is the shyness that is evident on the faces of the ladies. But apart from that, you can see to a greater extent the kind of lives they lead. It is an expressive to me photo, because you can see a lot about this village, about smaller Guyanese villages, about the way people live in the outlying areas in Guyana. The boys sitting at the back, the people looking at the weird foreigners with the big cameras. It seems to me that you can almost tell that they're wondering what the hell are these people doing walking around with the cameras? Why would they want to take pictures of us? We chatted with them for a bit as well, but nothing to do with actually taking the photos, just their lifestyle. I think we spent a couple of days there. It is possible, perhaps even likely, that some of you might recognize this lady. She sits there out there quite often, and a lot of people know her. Anybody who frequents that area knows her. And my wife and I were driving past, for whatever reason, God only knows now. And I saw her, and we continued on. And I told my wife, you have to circle the block and come around back. I have to go and take this woman's photo. So I got out of the car, there was a traffic jam. I got out of the car, walked up. I didn't want to intimidate her by driving up and jumping out of the car with the camera in her face as well either. So I walked up to her and asked her if she'd be willing for me to take a photo. And it is surprising sometimes, given the amount of resistance that you might expect, how often people are to share with you and permit you to take their photo. No, this to me is a gift. It is a gift from them to us. Any photographer, I know there's a group here who inspired by an American photographer, they approach people and take photos and have a little dialogue which they publish along with the photos. I really like that idea. I think that is something useful, to have that sharing. It goes beyond simply taking a pretty picture, and I really think that it is a worthwhile project to pursue. And if anybody has an opportunity, I would recommend that you search for the Humans of Guyana page on Facebook. And check it out. The stories are interesting. I read each and every single one. I never got this lady's story, but I think that I got a story. And the story is for you to interpret. This one, I believe, you can get quite a lot from. Not only from her, but from the surroundings. This is actually taken in the same location of the photo of Jacqueline, the same mall where the vendors sell. And this is, I wouldn't say this is necessarily typically a Guyanese scene. It certainly is a typical Caribbean scene. This was midday. I mean, the time when we walk around is midday during lunch hour. And the lady had such a personality. She absolutely, not only did she not want to put away the implements and pose, she wanted me to take her photo of her hair being done by the young lady. These are people who you really ought to talk to, and in the absence of being able to talk to them, I am happy that I can share photos of them. So you can imagine the conversation you might have with somebody like that. It's bound to be interesting. I don't know how many of you go out to the seawall early in the morning, but it's something that I really like doing. On certain auspicious days, I have to use that word, it's an important word. On certain auspicious days, the Hindus go out to have their little puja. This is Kingston, right opposite the bandstand. The curious thing is, it's not only Hindus who go out there. There are other religions who want to have a communion, I expect, with a pretty natural part of Georgetown. Anybody walking out in the street will know that there are a set who are determined to make it as unpretty as they possibly can by tossing all of their garbage right where they happen to finish with it. I always see, I go out here frequently in the mornings, and I have a difficulty approaching these people because it is an intrusion. And make no mistake about it, regardless of how often us photographers will argue about having a right to take the photos of people in a public place. This is an intrusion. And I asked them if I could take a photo before taking the photo. And I felt I wasn't happy about having to intrude even to ask permission, but I did. And for that, I got a nice photo of a family on an ordinary morning doing something that not a whole lot of us do. I know there's one attendee here this afternoon who is very upset at the detritus that is often left by many of the people who go out on the beach. And it can be an eyesore, but in large measure, at least in my observation, most people don't leave anything. They take all of their stuff with them. They might leave a flower or two, but no rubbish as such. I never spoke to this fellow. He knew I was there. I didn't hide. I was in clear sight. And it just seemed to me, the seawall for me is an important part of Georgetown. Very few people who live in Georgetown would not appreciate just how relaxing and comfortable and cleansing it is, even if you don't have a religious objective, just to go by the seawall and sit and listen to the waves for a little bit. I can't imagine living inland in a place where it is not possible to see the water. And I live in Diamond now, and it takes a very long time to get to the seawall, but I do it frequently, at least 15 times a month. And to me, this sums up in one photo why it is such an important thing to do. This for me is the photo of the seawall. This is Border Market. This is the second to last photo, and it would be All Year's Day. in 2012, I think it was, when I was doing a photo day project. For me, this is a perfect composition. It is beautiful. It is a set of beautiful colors, all Guyanese in their lack of matching. And there's an echo between how the lady is dressed and the flag that is hanging right there. The symbolism is kind of, it's not subtle to say the least, but on occasion sometimes you need a bit of stronger symbolism in order to make the point. And this is one of the photos that does that for me. This is the most recent photo that I'm showing this afternoon. And the reason that I've included this photo, it doesn't, as you can see, it doesn't really fit with the others. It's not Georgetown for one. I don't have a lot of photos of people outside of Georgetown. The one from Rio is one, and this is Wakapau in Essequibo. This shows a bit more of a lifestyle, a river lifestyle, and it's a bit unusual for what I normally do. Largely because I'm not often in a riverine community. But there's a technical aspect to why I like this photo, in addition to the symbolism and the composition. And that is just, it doesn't show well here. Whoever has, I printed these photos out, the samples for whoever was first to arrive. It is a beautiful print. It looks good. It's lush is the word that I would like to use. But apart from that, I just like the way it demonstrates how people live on the river. You go out in a boat, doesn't matter. You make your way where you have to go. It's a more relaxed lifestyle. I'm not sure that I have to speak too much about this photo. Just the look on her face, I think, is sufficient to tell you why I took this photo. This is a senior citizens get-together for Christmas at the Campbellville Community Center. A friend of ours asked us to take some photos there. And this is after the ceremony. The lady had collected her bag. And there are often times when we have looks on our faces which might not be representative of our overall demeanor or our state of mind. But this lady had been downcast and reserved for every part of the ceremony that I saw her. And she was sitting in this absolutely perfect light with this expressive hunch to her shoulder and look on her face. She saw me. It was impossible not to see me. It was her and I alone in an auditorium. So she saw when I got into position to take the photo. She looked at me and looked straight back out of, put herself back in that position. And just as with people who are more happier to take their photo, she gave me unspoken permission to take the photo. But she also did not compose herself. She didn't change her look. She went back to just how she was. And this, I think, was a gift. And I'm not seeing it any other way than that. That might, oh, no, we can't leave out British born. I don't know this fellow's name. This is one of the people who I chatted with a bit, to a greater extent. This gentleman whose main point in conversation was to ensure that we knew that he was British born. And I think he's an indigent fella, I'm not sure. I want to make the assumption. But there is such a contrast between, there is such a contrast in the way that he's dressed. He has a purse, he has those lovely white shoes and the socks, and he's clearly holding on to something. I think he may have lost something along the line, and the fact that he kept referring us to the fact that he was British born made it clear that he was referring or holding on to a past that he may have lost. This brings me to an interesting, well, not an interesting, something that I find interesting, and that is having a bit of respect for the people who you take photos of. It's a very delicate line to walk. It is, to me, from a certain perspective to show the truth, whatever the truth might be in society, that you might take a photo of an indigent person. I myself try to avoid doing that because I feel like it's exploitative. I feel like you're taking something without giving back to that person. Now, this is a personal opinion, it's not a criticism of anybody who does that, because I know the justification as well for people who do that. But I try not to do that, and I feel that I did not cross that line in this picture. I've spoken to this lady twice. I've taken several pictures of her. I don't know her name. She is a vendor outside, this would be to the south of Big Market, Starbuck Market. This morning, this was an early morning, I think before 7 o'clock. A few of us went to take some photos in that area. A friend wanted to have an experience with taking photos on the street, knowing that myself and Mike and others do that. So we went to Big Market. This lady, I got permission to take a photo after I took the photo. The bag and the pose and the sidelong glance, it was just a no-brainer. I went back, I often do prints of these photos and carry them back for the people who I know I could find again. So I did a print and took it back to her, and she loved it. I suspect it is a rare occasion for a market vendor to have a photo of themselves, particularly in that context. They may have a photo at a wedding, they may have a photo at home. They rarely have a photo of themselves at work. I make it a point for market vendors, particularly people who I know, even vendors on the street, to take a print back for them, because that is part of the sharing. I anticipate, well, I'm thankful for what they've given me. I want to give them something back as well. This is Buddy. If you've bought coconut water at Border Market, you've probably come across Buddy. You might not remember. Buddy won't remember me. Buddy gave me special coconut water for my pregnant wife when she was having a problem with what's the princess's name? Whatever her name, the British one, who's pregnant again apparently, dominating Facebook a few weeks ago. Yeah, Kate. She was throwing up a lot. And I went to Buddy and I said, Buddy, I need some coconut water for my wife who's throwing up a lot. And Buddy, I'd taken this photo before. This photo is actually before that occasion. But Buddy was very accommodating, and he actually filled up this water for me to take the photo. This is entirely staged and posed photo, despite the fact that it does not look that way. There's another well-known gentleman to anybody who walks on the pavement on Avenue of the Republic. I guess you can politely call him a tout. Others might less politely call him a nuisance. He allowed me to take the photo, which is a mark in his favor. This one, there's nothing more to this than the fact that it's a pretty picture that shows the flooding. So, I don't make statements, I don't make political statements, but insofar as I go somewhat to that extent, this is the political statement. Yeah, nothing much to say about this. This is just, he has such a Guyanese attitude. You could take the Starbucks market out of this and know that that's a Guyanese man driving a minibus. I don't think anybody who's ever gone in a minibus, including the minibus traveler who writes about his minibus traveling, will have any difficulty recognizing this. I've forgotten this lady's name. I took a photo of her. This is not it. This is the second photo that I took of her. The first photo on New Year's Day. This lady is out. Well, so was I. Out at Border Market selling her stuff. So when I went back to take the photo that I'd taken on New Year's Day, I asked her to let me kindly take another photo, a more posed photo, and she obliged. Very nice lady. She gave me some, when I took this print back for her, she gave me some fruits. I can't remember what it was now. Not oranges though. Yeah, this is another of the seaside photos. This goes again to that gestalt I was talking about. That child, if she lives in Guyana, if she moves from the seaside, if she moves, as seems to be the prevailing habit, if she moves to the United States, which she probably inevitably will, she will not remember this moment, but the next time she sees water splashing at the seaside, she will feel that familiarity. It doesn't matter if this is the only time this has ever happened. And that, to me, is that bit of familiarity that I try to pull out in photos that I take. Martin doing what he does best. He's the cook at a restaurant and asked me to take this photo of him, which is a fairly unusual thing. He sees the cameras and he knows that that's one of the things. He wanted a photo of him doing his job. It's just a nice-ish photo. Regent Street, Campen Regent. You know, there's a benefit to the person who takes the photo as well. This photo has its own merit. I mean, look at the look on her face. You will see that look on the lady at the market, on the face of the lady at the market, the lady behind the counter. And that relationship, that little wink that you get from people in the market. This is what makes it bearable when the next person is a pig and doesn't understand the meaning of service industry. It's these ladies who give you that little wink, you know? They have that little rapport with you, even if it's the first time and the last time that you will see them. And that to me is what shows in this particular photo. But apart from that, when you take photos, and this is something I'd suggest everybody try, you always remember what you're doing. It slows the time down. And for anybody who's gotten past a certain age, you know how quickly time passes. It just seems to vanish. And for me, that time has started accelerating. Years pass and I don't realize where it's gone. But when I look back at these photos, it slows me down. It pulls me back to the day that we went out. The entire group, well, a large part of the group of photographers, the Guyana photographers, we all went out on Regent Street to take photos, and that instantly puts me back to that moment. Slows me down, brings me back. Perfect recollection. And thank goodness, I'm done. This is the egg lady who hasn't gotten her photos yet, who I promised every time I walk past her that I have forgotten on this occasion, but I will come back and I will bring the photo for you. And I put this here so that I now have solid memory to compel me in front of everybody here at Moray House. I will take this photo for this one. Thank you very much.